And one more time, because I forgot to click the button. What a
No,
day.
not you.
What a day. Don't ever get old, Barry. I'll be right back.
Please enjoy this feature presentation of the Crooked River Radio Network. This program is rated for all audiences.
Welcome to the Nanosecond Podcast. With your hosts, Erik Nannarone, Nick Goglioni, and Pat Morrow. Interesting topics, intriguing conversation, and entertainment. Erik, Nick, and Pat will be right with you.
Hello and welcome to the Nanosecond Podcast. I'm Erik.
And I'm Evan. And I'm Pat, I think.
And to follow up, well, first I'll introduce and then I'll do a follow-up to what we were talking about pre-show. Today's guest is Barry Shuck from dogsbynature.com. How are you doing tonight, Barry?
I'm doing well. Yourself?
I'm good. So, to do a follow-up on what we were talking about, I don't know if you saw what I just sent you, if you had a chance. The Browns and state lawmakers met to discuss Brook Park Stadium plans, according to Signal Cleveland. The project was sold as a... Hold on. I'm horrible at reading. An economic development effort that includes a dome stadium and entertainment and lifestyle district, which I don't know fully what that means.
What they're going to do is they're going to do what they're doing with the Hall of Fame down here. It's going to be music, entertainment, and it's going to be more of a venue. They're going to be they were saying there's a possibility if they build a dome. I just hope it's a retractable dome. They were saying if they build the dome, it could hold 18 or host 18 or more other events than what the Browns are. So this is a money thing. And
yeah,
can you introduce Barry? Okay. I must not have been paying attention. Hi, Barry. How are you, sir?
Yeah, I'm doing well. According to the site I write for, dogsbynature.com, we've got one of our writers, Thomas Moore. He's one of our lead writers, and he's got a story out right now that came out this afternoon about this. They have not broken ground. They haven't even bought the property, even though they've got first rights for 176 acres. But what they did is they pitched the city council on a renovation plan for the current stadium, or they gave them plans for a new stadium that would be a dome stadium in Brook Park. And just to throw it out there so that the state lawmakers could have a chance to look at it. Now, the public hasn't seen any of these plans. That's to be shown probably next week at some point. But there's definitely going to be an entertainment district included with the stadium. And a lot of teams have done this. The Baltimore Bills are building a stadium right now, and they've spent $1.4 billion, that's with the B, on the stadium, and another $300 million on the complex. Chicago Bears are going to build a new stadium. They're going to do the same thing. The Tennessee Titans are building a dome stadium in Nashville, projected to cost, I think, $2.1 billion, and they're going to put an entertainment complex with it. And the reason for that is they don't want fast food around this. They don't want convenience stores around this. They can decide what kind of restaurants, bars, other kind of situations can be attached to this. I mean, it could even be amusement ride or indoor theaters for comedians and music groups, but they would control all that by having venues like this, and then it would be a destination. So travel from whatever state we're in, we're staying in the area. That's another thing they can do, is they can decide which hotels can be built on this property or near this property, and whether they get money back from that or not. I would assume if you and I, owned a chain, it would make sense that we would offer them some sort of financial incentive to let us build a hotel on their property. They would control all that. The Haslam's would control all that, so that they're not putting something lesser than what they want. They want this to be nice. They want it to be upscale. But if we're coming from out of town, and we come in Thursday and we get to spend 2-3 days in this complex, and then the game is on Sunday, and then we fly out Monday, preferably, then it's a whole package that we can enjoy ourselves as a family or as people or as adults or whatever. And we can go to clubs, we can see movies, we can, a play, we can see a show, we can do this, we can do that, and just have all of this stuff around it as a destination.
Don't you think that, hearing an echo there. Don't you think that that's going to be a hard sell for to pick between the two of them, just because of the fact that you've got Playhouse Square down there in where they're at now, more or less. You've got the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. You've got Science Museum. You've got the park or Lakewood that's going to be developed here shortly. Don't you think it'd be a hard sell for them to move that out there?
But they don't.
No.
Oh.
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
Well, they don't own. What I was going to say is they don't own that property. They're not benefiting off those things you listed, like the Rock Hall and the Science Museum. Yeah, and they're also very landlocked at that stadium. Anyway.
Yeah, but you still have it. In some aspects, it's not going to matter who owns it. I know the Haslams probably would want to own a large chunk of it, but don't you think just at the entertainment value that's down there, I think it'd be a hard sell.
Well, who owns what? The stadium?
No.
Is that what you're saying about? Who owns the stadium?
The stadium's owned by Cleveland, the municipal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's owned by the city of Cleveland.
I'm saying if they moved to Brook Park, you're saying it wouldn't matter who owned the stadium?
No, it's going to matter. It doesn't matter where they're at now. If you look at the entertainment aspect of this, I'm not
okay.
This isn't ownership. I'm not talking about that. But you got all this stuff in that area down there. Don't you think it'd be a hard sell for them to move out there to Brook Park and have to build all that? I suppose it isn't going to matter much to Haslam. He's got all the money in the world anyway, or at least he thinks he does. Don't you think it'd be a hard sell to move them out there?
Okay, where do the San Francisco 49ers play?
Santa Clara, California.
Yeah, this is true too.
How it is.
Where did the LA teams play? Englewood.
Where does Dallas Cowboys play? They're not in Dallas.
Yeah, they're in Arlington.
Yeah, they're not.
The
Giants.
We actually talked about this on a previous episode. Like the Buffalo Bills, they've been in Orchard Park for half a century. Do I have that right?
Same thing with the Patriots. The Patriots have been out in the sticks since Super Stadium back in the 70s. The Giants and the Jets don't even play in the same state, much less the same area. All right, let's look at it in a pro aspect. You go out to Brook Park. It is accessible from interstate. So you take 4 exits. You have 2 coming from the north, 2 coming from the south, the stadium in the middle. You've got parking lots north, parking lots south. You know, every game, how many Greyhound buses are at a game? 150, 300? I know people charter buses, especially like Browns clubs charter buses all the time, whether they're going to Chicago, whether they're going to Indianapolis, Cincinnati, Pittsburgh. So it's nothing from the Pittsburgh chapter to charter a bus to drive to Cleveland. So you've got 4 exits that people can get off and get back on. Or 2, they can find a parking spot. They've got so much land out there, parking is not going to be an issue. The only thing you're going to have to remember is when you get the tram to go back is which parking lot your car is in. Raise your hand if you have a parking lot space going to a game in downtown Cleveland right now. Anyone? I tell you, when I come in, I go to my brother's house in Indianapolis. We drive over. We stay at a hotel in downtown Cleveland. I park underneath it. I pay $20-something a day to park my vehicle, and we never drive anywhere. We just walk down. We walk to the stadium. We walk back after when we check out the next day. We get in our car and we drive back to Indianapolis, which is a 5.5 hour clip right there. But I don't drive anywhere. I don't have to find a parking spot. It's there, but I got to pay per day while I'm there for 4 days. But you've got all this thing. Then number 2, you can control the entire surroundings. If you don't want McDonald's and Burger King there, but want something more upscale, then that's in your realm. That is your possibility because you own the land. You own everything frontage. You own everything to the north, the south, east, and west. You can decide if you want this restaurant to come in, this bar to come in. If you don't want convenience stores, fine. If you want gas stations or certain kinds, of course, there's going to fly in J's, then fine. But you control every bit of that. And what I said about hotels, if you don't want a certain brand to come in and you want some other brands, then you lease or sell those out parcels to those entities right there. And it's just, especially if you build a hotel there and then you got entertainment, you got restaurants, you got gas stations, you got this and that, eating places, you'll park your vehicle and you won't have to go anywhere. You won't have to drive anywhere. Just park and you stay right there. You walk to the stadium, and when it's all over with, you get your car, you jump on the interstate, and either you drive to the airport or you drive back home, wherever you're from. I think it's wonderful. Then if you've got a stadium, like they have a stadium and it's got, in the front, it's got windows open like this and close like this. And in the top, they've got it like this and it closes like this. The last time I went to a game in Indy, it was 9 degrees. Well, more heavy stuff, but when we got inside, I'm in a long sleeve shirt and that's it. Wearing 2 pairs of socks and, I'm inside. It's toasty. It feels good. We're not worrying about, and we're not worried about if we didn't bring enough players, and is my hands going to be okay with the pair of gloves and how many pairs of socks, and if the long johns I'm wearing the right kind, or should I have brought another one, or should I have brought another scarf, or, out my ears. You don't have to worry about any of it. Just from your car to the stadium, which if it's going to be like, I would imagine the parking situation, if you've ever gone to a theme park like Walt Disney World Orlando or Universal Studios in Orlando, you go through the gate, you pay a parking fee, then they tell you where to park, then they have trams, and you jump on the tram, know that your vehicle is in 9E. And that's all you got to know. When you get out of the game, you have a certain area that this is going to go to the E, F, and G parking lots, and you get on those trams, and they take you to the area, and they may not take you to your car, They're going to take you to 9E. Then all you do is you get on 9E and you get out of the parking lot. You travel this little road. You get on the interstate and you're gone. So that for a dome stadium, I don't go November or December game in Cleveland. I'm sorry. I'm just not built that way. I'm not built for the cold. I wasn't raised in the cold. I'm northern born, southern raised. And that cold is to the bone. And if I'm sitting there for 3 hours, yes, you know how to sit there for 3 hours. I don't. But that wind coming off, there's no getting away from that wind. There's just none. So if you have it climate controlled, and think about September. September's a hot month. So why not air condition that where, you don't have to worry about that. If certain parts of the stadium, it depends on if it's a noon, a 4 o'clock game, either in the sun or you're in the, well, indoors, you're neither. So you don't have to worry about if you're going to get sunburned in a September game, or if the shade in November, you're going to freeze to death. You take the Miami Dolphins playing at the Kansas City Chiefs. In that game, 30% of the people that went to that game have got homes today with frosting. 30%. And those are people that lived there, that know how to go to a game. It was that cold. So you got toasty environments, everybody can come. Your grandfather can come, so can your 4-year-old.
Okay. Sorry, my internet's been kind of touchy through this interview. So, and I drew a blank. Oh, well, okay, I know where I was going with that. The Browns are also upgrading their practice facility a lot too. I mean, they bought out 98% of that neighborhood that's around it. There's a few people who don't want to sell their property, but so they're upgrading that too. So they're putting a lot of money out there for, facilities. Just throwing that out there.
Yeah, and they should. Have you been to the Berea facility?
I bet I've been there once. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it's just right down the road. It's what, hours?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It's just right down the road. So it's not like, excuse me, it's not 5 hours.
It's a little over an hour from here.
Yeah, it's a little over an hour. I'm sorry, excuse me. No, excuse me, it's 11 minutes.
From the stadium
it's right down the road, so it's not like it's an inconvenience. It is the new stadium would be a lot closer to the old stadium. Here's the thing about stadiums is when they build old municipal stadium, it was built for the Indians. It was not built for the Browns. It wasn't built for any pro football team. It was built for the Indians. The configuration, the field, the stands, everything was built for the end. It was built to be downtown because that's where people lived and worked. Well, now we don't live downtown, or the majority of us don't. Well, we live somewhere out of downtown. Now, we may still work downtown, and I'm not saying people don't live downtown. They do. But back then, there wasn't parking was an afterthought because you could walk, you could take the trolley, you could take if there were train lines, if there were trolley lines, if there were buses, public transportation. You take in Louisiana and Nolens, they still have trolleys, and people still don't have to drive anywhere to get on the trolley and go somewhere. Francisco's the same thing. You just get on the trolley and go. That's how a lot of these cities work, where they had, you were only 20 blocks from the stadium anyway, so they didn't worry about parking. Well, now we have to worry about parking. It's like going to tailgate in the Muni lot. You better be there on Thursday get a spot for Sunday. So you got to be there days and days and days to tailgate because it fills up fast.
It's crazy how fast that fills up. I mean,
and so leaving downtown is not going to be an issue. I think out of the 32 teams, I think 20 of them still are in the city that they're called, like Philadelphia. But the Miami Dolphins are in Miami Gardens, North. Atlanta's still there. The Saints are still there, but the Cardinals are not. 49ers are not. Even Las Vegas Raiders, they're out in paradise. It's an adjoining, and the reason for that, land is cheap, and then they can hold and do what they want with all that land, and they've got room to expand to. Right now, if the Browns wanted to expand, where do they expand to?
The middle of the lake.
Build something. Yeah, build something over the lake.
Yeah, you do what the Dutch do. You reclaim some land, I guess, from the lake.
Yeah. The Dutch are good at that.
Barry, since you're here, last time we all talked, we had brought up that since this issue's been churning around a little while, we brought up the scenario of the Buffalo Bills, and we were trying to figure out, all right, why did they move to Orchard Park, which is south of downtown, and not even build Dome? That was another thing that I thought was kind of curious, is that the Bills were when they originally became an NFL team, they were an AFL team, as many of us have learned through history. Their home field was on the east side of the city. And then I guess Ralph Wilson took charge, and he started looking for another place. Why do you think the Bills didn't even build a dome? I mean, Buffalo is just as bad as we are as far as weather in the winter.
They have Green Bay Packer fever. Green Bay will never have a dome either. They'll never have a dome stadium. They don't want it. They like the fact that they're that they can take it. Oddly enough, the Bills are the second Buffalo Bills. They won. The Cleveland Browns came from the All-American football from 1946 to 1949. 1946, they put a team in Buffalo and called them the Buffalo Bisons. In 1947, they changed them to the Bills. In 47, 48, and 49, they were the Buffalo. The AAFC did not schedule any games in December in Buffalo. Played their entire home schedule in September, October, because of the harshness of the weather. But when they became in the American Football League in 1960, the American Football League did not consider that, and they considered them to be, a season just like any other franchise. But the Bills don't want they want to be known as being able to take that cold weather. They don't care. A friend of mine is a big Packer. One of his things off his bucket list was he had been to Packer games. He wanted a Packer game in December in the snow. He wanted to freeze his butt off. Well, to happen. He went to a game in the middle and it snowed, and like the greatest moment of his life. And that's just what they want. They're known for that. They care. And Lamb will never have a dome, and Buffalo will never have a dome. Now, oddly enough, was playing one game, one priest game, one regular season game in Toronto, and that quit. But Toronto's got a dome. So it's not like the Bills haven't had a home game in with the Buffalo Bills, but they're playing at Highmark Stadium now. It's in Orchard Park, and you take what was the game that they had? That game was that against Baltimore? Is that what that was?
think so. I think you're right.
Yeah.
Where they had the
And
4
they had
feet
all-
of snow.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was Baltimore. They ended up playing where?
Yeah. Yeah, they invite these people to show up, and I mean, who wants to do that? But that's them, and they don't care. They don't care about that. They don't think that that's an issue or a problem. They just think it's a situation that they had to figure out what to do, and they did. So
You mentioned Green Bay, and that's obviously the smallest city in the entire league. How do they handle their parking and all the other amenities that go along with attending a Packers game? Have you ever heard about that?
yeah, it's kind of like the Senior Bowl. The Senior Bowl was playing in a stadium. They've got limited parking. It may park 200 cars. It's built in the 1938. The Senior Bowl doesn't play there now. They play UT South Alabama. They've got a brand new football stadium. Their program is only about 10 years old. It holds about 25,000, and that's where the Senior Bowl plays now. But the old Ladd Stadium not downtown, but just off of downtown Mobile, hold 44,000. But it's one of those that was built with concrete bleachers. Here they put on aluminum bleachers and bolted on concrete. But what they did is if you went to you parked in somebody's, back when I started my coverage of the Senior Bowl, it was in the 90s. My first year, Belichick was head coach of the and I parked in somebody's yard for $5. Now, the last year they had it was $20. You park in the front yard, the backyard, and that's what they do in Green Bay, is you just park in the yard. It's kind of like college. If you ever gone to college games, you just kind of park wherever. And some towns, like Auburn, it's just basically you're parking on somebody's front yard, backyard, side yard. Sometimes you pay, sometimes you don't. But that's what they do in Buffalo. I mean, in Green Bay, started as a company team. Mm-hmm. So if all of us worked at a factory and we all played for the softball team, right? That's how Green Bay started. That's how the Bears started. Started as company teams for manufacturing companies that said, hey, we want some recognition. We want to start a baseball team. Then they said, we also want to start a football team. And Curly Lambeau and, the Packers, he had played college football. So they came, he was a department manager, is all Curly Lambeau was. Same thing with Bears. He was just a department manager. He had played for the University of Illinois. And they said, hey, you played baseball and you played football. Will you put a team together? And we want to get advertised. We want to get in the newspaper. And that's how George Howell got to be the owner or got involved with football. But the Packers started out with no field. They started out with just a field. And that's where tailgating was invented, because so many people they couldn't see standing along the field. So people started bringing their vehicles in and bringing them in backwards, then going to church. And then they would have cooked food and they would show up at the game. They started bringing in trucks and wagons backward. They'd have a second level so they could see over. And that's where tailgating started, because there was no stand.
So,
and in the 1950s, the NFL tried to force the Packers to move. They were playing one game in Milwaukee a year. They tried to force the Packers to move to Milwaukee permanently because it was a big city and Green Bay was a medium city. But that never happened.
So let's move into the draft a little bit. And
all right.
Sorry to change the subject on you, but since today's show is going to be a draft wrap up, so tell us. I'll have you tell us a little bit about each player because I know you dig deep into the players and know a lot more than I do. I mean, I know a little bit, but
Yeah.
But anyway,
Well,
let's.
I have
first,
I have. Go ahead.
Go ahead.
I have a series going on called Meetup, and what I do is I take each player and I dive in all the way to their high school years and talk about their high school, about their life, their families, their mom and dad, their brothers, anything and everything I can find, all the way through college, and then I just kind of write an article. I've had 3 of them already. We've got the Meetup on Michael Hall Jr. from Ohio State. Then the second one was Zach Zinter from the National Championship Michigan. And the one that came out today is on wide receiver Jamari Thrash from Louisville. And then tomorrow will be the fourth one on Nathaniel Watson, whose name is Bookie. He doesn't go by Nathaniel. He doesn't go by Nate. He goes by Bookie. That will be tomorrow. And then the next day I'll have one on cornerback Miles Harden. And then the last one will be on Briggs. Then I'll probably take 2 or 3 free agents and do the same thing. I'm not sure which one it'll be at this moment. Probably I know one will be the tight end Trayton Wilch because GM Andrew Barry didn't draft a tight end, but he did sign a tight end. Well, first of all, let me get all 3 of y'all's opinion of Barry taking a defensive tackle, Michael Hall Jr., and then I'll throw in what I know about him.
I'll start. I like it. He might have underperformed a little bit at Ohio State this past year, but there's so much talent on that D line that it would have been hard for him to outperform specifically the DNs. How, Evan or Pat?
I'll just back you up.
Go ahead.
The toughest thing there is whenever somebody attends Ohio State, the biggest problem is there's always going to be an embarrassment of riches, and a player has to try and make a name for himself. And sometimes, you end up being, a reserve or even third team. And I'd say as far as depth goes, we need it. Well, that we've seen enough injuries over the years, especially this past season. Who knows what would have happened had we been able to be at full strength for most of the season. But we did well enough to make the playoffs. So depth never hurts.
Well, when I heard he was a defensive tackle, I thought, that's one of the places where we had the most injuries. It seemed like we had the most injuries on the defense this past year. I thought it was a pretty good move by Cleveland to pick that kid up. He's not a half bad performer, at least what you could see of him in the college ranks and that. But personally, I think it was a good move. I know Barry, you're liable to tell us all different, but let's hear it.
Well, I know before the draft, we had 7 defensive tackles on the roster. 7. So we drafted 2. So now we got 9. Joe Woods kept 4 defensive ends and 4 defensive tackles. Laston Schwartz, defensive coordinator of the Browns, he kept 5. And the reason behind that, he wants to make sure that they stop. Because under Joe Woods, we didn't stop anybody. They ran up the gut. When we played against the Chargers, they showed other teams how to beat our defense. So, Jim Schwartz, you're not going to run up the gut on these A gaps and 3-tech gaps. You're not going to run on us anymore. So why we had Maurice Hurst. That's why they signed Dalvin Tomlinson. We had Jordan Elliott in the middle, and we signed Shelby Harris. Now we've got all of those except for Jordan Elliott back. I fully expect Hurst and Tomlinson to be the starter. With Shelby Harris, we signed Quentin Jefferson from the Jets. So if you take Tomlinson and Hurst as starters, then you got last year's Siaka Ake, which they call a poo. That's C. Then you just draft Michael Hall. That's 4. It only leaves one guy. So it's either going to be Shelby Harris, Quentin Jefferson, or it's going to be this 7th rounder, Juwan Briggs. Now the other ones we have on the roster is Jaden Peavy and Chris Williams. So there we've got a very full room. Competition's great, but we're going to be cutting some good play. And you may say, well, we can put them on practice squad. Well, once you release them, though, that means no matter whether you drafted them or not, once you release anybody else, 31 teams can pick them up. And you may say, well, we'll put him in training camp and then we'll cut him and then we'll put him on our practice squad. Okay. If they go through waivers. So we're going to have some good defensive tackles that we're going to cut that they're not going to be available for our practice squad. They're going to end up on some other teams. So I was a little surprised that we took a defensive tackle so early. I was expecting more in the 5th round. Some like Tyler Davis of Clemson. I was thinking that they were going to go something like off tackle, linebacker, maybe even cornerback with the iffiness of Greg Newton. But he did take my ball. So now we got the first thing that stands out to me is did you know he's only 20 years old?
Yeah. He has so many. Oh, go ahead.
No, 20 years old. What do you think about that?
I mean, it's amazing. He has so much growth he can make and at such a young age in development. And hopefully this new D-line coach can get the best out of him.
Yeah. Here's another thing. Michael Hall was born and raised in Cleveland.
Yeah. Statesboro.
He went to Benedictine High School, which is a Catholic preparatory institution over there on Martin Luther King Drive in Cleveland. He was raised without a father. His mother, her name is Linda Hicks, is the one who raised him, and basketball player. In fact, he thought that he might have a career in basketball, but he had a coach that told him, not sure if you're going to make it in basketball if you go to the college level. I think you ought to stay on the defense side of the ball. And the quiet kid, he doesn't slot. He's a gym rat. In high school, he was all state. He was first team all district. He was first team all league. He had a bunch, and everybody wanted him. He offers from like Alabama and Tennessee and Florida State and Michigan State. So, everybody wanted him. And he ended a camp at University of Kentucky as a 16-year-old and as a 15-year-old just before his 16th birthday. When he finished camp, the University of Kentucky offered him a scholarship right there and then.
Wow. That's amazing. I've never heard that story.
So he could have been in the SEC. I think Hall's regarded as an explosive player. He gets off the ball quickly. He's got good speed for his position and for his body size. How he got to Ohio State was after his junior year. Ohio State head coach Ryan Day reached out, like all head coaches do, but he gave him an advice. Hall was playing offensive guard and was playing defensive tackle. He was playing both sides of the ball in high school. And Coach Day told him that if you will focus just on the defensive side of the ball, we'll talk next summer. And after his senior year, Ryan Day came back, and Hall ended up being all state, all district, all everything on the defensive side of the ball. Day showed up again. That's when he offered him a full scholarship. Hall only went to 3 different places for visits. Now, high schoolers got 5 official visits they can have. He went to Penn State, he went to Cincinnati, and he went to Ohio State. The offer. He played some as a freshman. By his junior year, he was lights out. He's got a wingspan of 81 1/8 inch. Now, his 40 time, 4.78. The defensive tackle, 4.78.
Just for reference for anybody listening, what's the average 40 for a D tackle?
It's everything for O-line, defensive tackle and any O-line is over 5. If you can get a 5.02 from any of those, you need to write the president and tell him that.
Yeah,
4.78.
4.78 is what he did. Wow.
Yep.
That's quick.
I cover the Senior Bowl every year. Michael Hall was at the Senior Bowl. At the end of the week, the Tuesday practice, the Wednesday practice, and the Thursday practice, the defensive player that stood out all week was Michael Hall.
That's probably why they wanted him.
Yeah. He was a standout in high school. He was a standout in at Ohio State. So his accolades as a junior, he was the 2022 honorable mention All Big Ten. And then last year he was 3rd team All Big Ten. He was invited to the Combine and he was invited to the Senior Bowl. So I think he's effective with stunt concepts as a looper and a penetrator. I think he'd be more of a 1-gap 3 technique in a 4-man front, which is what the Browns play. And I think as far as his career, he will be developmental at first as a defensive tackle. He is great at rushing the passer. I think he's a little bit weaker at stopping the run, but he is good at rushing the passer. He's got off the ball explosiveness and lateral agility and dynamic hand usage, especially as far as a claw arm over move. I think that's going to present some problems. Now, let me just say this, and I should have said this in the beginning. The Browns have 6 draft picks. Am I correct?
Yeah.
Okay. None of them back to the start. None of them are needed to start. None of them have to start. None of them need to play. None of them need to get snaps. None of them need to get in the game. They can be a healthy scratch all 16 weeks, and it's okay. That is the situation. The only position open is there's no offensive spots open. All 11 are taken. There is no special teams spots open. All of them are taken. All 5 are taken. The only position open, starting job, 1 outside linebacker position. That's it. That's it. And we got guys that are on the team that are going to compete for that. So we drafted 2 defensive tackles. We drafted a cornerback. We drafted offensive guard. We drafted a linebacker. None of them have to start. None of them are needed to start. Every one of them can learn in practice, learn from veterans. All 6 of these are for the 24 season. All 6 of these are for the 2025 season or the 2026 season. I mean, look at our cornerback room. We don't need a cornerback. We got 4 good ones. What do we need cornerback for? Drafted one for the 25 and 26. So when you pick somebody like Michael Hall, last year we picked up a kid. At first, he played very little the first half of the year. Then he played more, and he got 9% of defensive snaps, 9.32 of defensive snaps from week 10 to week 17. That's the way Michael Hall's going to be. Michael Hall's going to get very little playing time in the first half of the season. Towards the end, he'll start getting into that defensive tackle rotation, and they'll start sending him in for some snaps, getting him acclimated to that. When is the last time the drafted players to play for next year or the year after?
It's been a while. It really has. Do you have maybe a idea of a comparison that player wise to that you can compare to Mike Hall, who's in the NFL right now, just to give maybe an idea of what his upside is?
No, I don't have a clue. I don't have anybody I can compare that to. Sorry.
Oh, that's fine.
I just know he's got a first step burst. He's got upper body power, and he's got really good length to make an immediate impact as a rotational interior rusher. He'll get in there. I expect Tomlinson and Hurst to start. He'll get in that rotation. He may beat out last year's rookie Apu, but either be Shelby Harris or Jefferson, who will be that third guy. But I think towards the end of the year, he can be that 5th guy that can come in and get some snaps, get some live game action. And by at the end of the year, I tell you what he's probably going to be. He's probably going to be on punt team at first. I can tell you he's going to get a lot of snaps on punt. He may not be on kickoff team because the kickoff is so different now with players only being 5 yards apart. If they were traditional kickoff, he may be on kickoff team, not kickoff receive, but kickoff team working down and, create some havoc. He'll definitely be on punt team. But as far as defensive snaps, I expect him to rarely, if any, to be in the first half of the season, then play some. At the end of the year, you're going to find out he's only going to be in there for, like 100 defensive snaps for the entire season. And I think that'll be a win.
Yeah.
But he's not needed. He's not needed. If we didn't draft him, we got 5 defensive tackles that we can look at and say, these are our 5. So it's not like we need Michael Hall to be one of our 5 defensive tackles. We don't. We got 5 defensive tackles right now. He's going to replace one of those that we could say this is our 5th guy.
It'll be nice to actually have depth to be able to have a rotation on the D-line so guys can be rested a little bit more than if they were playing way more snaps. And you need the depth to do that. I mean, I know like when they brought in Jim Schwartz, that was the big thing is he does a rotation of guys. And I've heard some people be like, why do you need a rotation? Just leave the guys in as many snaps as you can. I'm like, that just risks more injury and the long-term effects that's going to have on the guys are you never know. They could have major either injuries, bone or muscle, or even worse, head injuries. The brain injuries, brain trauma.
Yeah. Well, on every play, on every single snap in a football game, the offensive line may be tied in, the defensive line, maybe the linebacker, be a fullback. All of those players get hit every play. Mm-hmm. Every play they get hit. They're engaged with somebody every play. Receivers, once in a while.
Did we lose him?
Okay. Safeties, once in a while. But offensive and defensive line, they are hit every play. So if you've got, and the five offensive linemen, they never come out of the game. And you don't want them to come out of the game. Not a center, two guard, two tackles. They are one unit. They are one player. They are not five players, one unit. They never come out of the game. Well, if you can rotate in defensive player that can go to the side and rest, and then when they come in, they're fresh. What does that do to the offensive line? Offensive line has that down.
No,
they haven't brought in a guard and substituted.
Hey Barry, not to cut you off, but can you log off and log back in? You're cutting out really bad. Lot.
I show full internet connection.
Yeah, you're getting kind of choppy here.
Okay. All right.
I'm back here. We're not going anywhere just yet.
Yeah, we're not going anywhere. We're just trying to gain better connection with Barry. But just to piggyback off his point that you don't see a guard or a tackle, being rotated on the offensive line. So having the rotation of defensive ends or defensive tackles actually helps because they're more, I don't want to say conditioned, but they're less tired because they're able to sit out more versus an offensive line where they're not going to sub out unless of injury. Or they might bring in an extra lineman, but they're not. That extra lineman is exactly what it is, extra, not replacing somebody. So, I mean, what do you guys have to say to that?
Guy's a great pick. I wish I'd been a little more aware of him while he, before he was drafted. I probably heard his name once or twice, but I like Barry's observations. He said, hey, he's a great pass rusher. He's not really great at stopping the run. So he's going to probably, if, based on what Barry was just telling us, he's going to be a situational guy if he's used at all. And Barry said, we don't even need him right now. We have plenty of starters that are talented, and he doesn't have to take any snaps that the defensive coordinator doesn't want him to take. And he might say, not this week. And that's a great thing to have. I know that we're still stinging over, losing in the playoffs, a couple of months ago. But if this, what we're seeing right now builds into something and it becomes, a Super Bowl winning team, I'm all for it. it would gladden my heart. The Chiefs waited forever to win a Super Bowl between their first one and the last two that they have won. And so I'm willing to wait a season if that's what's required. So I'm going to stick with the plan. So how do you guys feel about that?
I mean, I agree 100%. You got to stick. I used to hate to hear, it's a process, and not to change sports, but oh, am I getting an echo? No. But using the example of the Philadelphia 76ers real quick, that they keep saying, trust the process. How many years did we hear that with the Browns?
The process wasn't very good. I think that's what we heard.
Exactly. And I heard today, just using this Philadelphia 76ers as the example, the process is going to probably need change, because their process is getting them to the first round of the playoffs and not anywhere else. But anyway, back to the Browns. They're finally at a great point in the process where they don't have, like we said earlier, don't have to play these guys that they drafted. They can actually develop. Hi, Barry.
Is that a question to me?
No, yes, that was. We're just making sure the connection's better.
Yep. Looks good.
Okay, cool.
Go
ahead, Pat.
As far as building this team, building the Browns into the future, I love the idea of that.
Him and Michael Hall have in common.
I think we doubled.
Okay. So last year in the Ohio State Michigan game, do you remember when they had to stop the game for a guy on the got hurt?
Yep. That was Zach. And then the guy who fell on his leg was Mike Hall.
So Zenter was locked up with another guy. And what happened was Michael Hall fell when he was getting blocked. And what he did is he fell on the back of Zenter's leg, and he broke both bones in his leg. Both. That's what they have in common. Of course, one's Ohio State, so that's bad enough. But what they have in common is that they're involved in that injury right there. Zenter's supposedly, broken bone. Not like he tore up a knee. It's not like he tore up a hip. He broke his leg.
Or blew an ACL.
Yeah, or blew an ACL. So that was his injury. He wasn't able to play in any of the playoff games. He didn't play in the national championship game. He was invited to the combine. He was invited to the Senior Bowl. He didn't do any of that. But my question was, why draft an offensive guard? And why draft one as high as the third round? What's y'all's thought process on that?
I will jump in first. I know exactly why. Because you have two highly paid guards that next year you're going to have to either restructure. If they're not willing to restructure, then the contract-wise, one's going to be gone. And most likely it's going to be Joel Bitonio possibly retiring. Or leaving in free agency.
What about you, Evan? Why do you think they drafted the guard?
I concur. I see all those picks as depth choices. They're what what Andrew Barry was trying to accomplish there was, he said, all right, I don't necessarily need any of these positions. You laid that out really well here earlier. But what are going to be my future needs? Who am I going to need to replace 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, however many years later? And I need to decide, okay, well, I'm probably going to need somebody on the offensive line that's going to be replaced. We've already talked about Joel Bitonio. He's the senior most member of the squad. He may end up retiring or leaving in free agency or doing something else. And you're going to need to put in someone to replace him. You're going to need to do the same thing with the defense. Obviously, I'd say the defensive ends and the nose tackles are probably a priority there. If you're trying to keep stopping the run, it's always going to start at the front. Having the linebackers that can rush, that's an added bonus. But all of that to me says, all right, we're happy with what we have right now. We had a winning record. We looked pretty good in the regular season. We can wait for these other players to become developed to our satisfaction. And then when we see what we like, we'll plug them into the starting lineup.
Yep. And of course, this comes off the heels of the Browns cutting Drew Forbes. Mm-hmm. So they Drew Forbes forever. He's an injury that he seemed to get away from. But the Browns have Michael Dunn. They got Luke Weipler, who may or may not be backup center. He, they drafted him to be a center from Ohio State last year. He may be a guard. Right now, he's listed as Wyatt Teller's backup. He's not listed as Music's backup, but Wyatt Teller's backup. I agree with both of you on all fronts on that. Bitonio, he how many Pro Bowls has he's got in consecutive right now? Is it 6?
Yeah, I think so. 5 or 6. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Teller's had 2, so it's not like we don't like Teller. We're disappointed. Neither one. They're great. Both of them are great. However, when you draft somebody now, like you said, and you're drafting for 2026, he's not drafted to play this year. We don't need him to play right now. We don't know. We got Michael Dunn as the first man off the bench. Okay. But let's look at money. Teller is going to get paid $11.61 million this year. That's his cap hit. Bitonio's cap hit is $12.15 million. That's for Pro Bowl offensive guards. However, both their deals end after the 2025 season. After their deals are in 2025, it'll be 31.
Yeah,
Bitonio will be 34 years old.
That's what I was going to bring up. These players are getting old. They're not going to be here forever. You've got to take and get some young stuff in here. And, you're saying you're saving this stuff for the future. I believe that. But the other thing that occurs to me, especially in the rounds that they've been drafting in, is the player's liable to blow out just as much as he's got as much of a chance blowing out as he does doing something terrific in the league. How many players that's been drafted past the number 50 draft in the draft, after the 50th pick? How many of them can you? I don't know, 2 or 3. I can probably count that on one hand. You got to got to give these guys a chance to blow out or make something for themselves. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah. And you're exactly right. You're exactly right. Well, listen to this. but Betonio will go from next year from 12 million to 22.9 million in 1 year. So in his last year of his contract, he'll go from 12.135 to 22.9. That's more than that's 10 million more.
Is that guaranteed money?
And Teller will go from 11 million to 21 million in just 1 year. So not only is there age involved in that, but they're also getting paid $10 million more times 2 guys. So if you can go ahead and get a guy now in the 3rd round, instead of paying them that much money, they'll be paying them not only rookie money, but 3rd down rookie money.
That's a good point. Very good point. And
so that's what's going on with Zenter. That's why they went ahead and drafted him. Plus, Michigan always puts out good offensive linemen.
Mm-hmm.
Pat was asking a question just a moment ago there, Barry. How much of the money for Betonio and Teller is guaranteed that next year when they have that huge pay bump? You know,
all of the rest of it.
Okay, so it's all guaranteed money.
The reason is last year they signed them to extensions.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, okay.
The way extensions work is like, let's just take Deshaun Watson. He was supposed to make $46 million this year.
Mm-hmm.
Well, the loophole to salary cap money is instead of paying him $46 million and him being $46 million cap space, and they'll pay him $5 million and then give them a $41 million bonus. So a $41 million check.
Mm-hmm.
And then throughout the year, NFL players get paid every 2 weeks. So in a 17-week season, there's 8 or 9 pay weeks. Every 2 weeks, they get a direct deposit. That's where their money comes from. And that comes from the team. When they get in the playoffs, those checks are paid by the league. The Browns don't pay for playoff checks, except to Joe Flacco this year, where they paid him per game instead of per season. But that's how checks are set up. So, unlike in Deshaun Watson, they signed Teller and Betonio extensions, but they gave them huge bonuses, and then didn't pay them much for the season. You'll see a guy, he'll only make $1.5 million, but he should have made $46 million. That's what they did in Deshaun Watson's first year, the one that he was going to be suspended.
Mm-hmm.
They took all that money and then they backloaded it. And then what they did is they just renegotiated his contract for a year, gave him more money up front. It's a loophole. These agents know how to do all that. But the point of it is they're both going to be over 30, north side of 30. They're both going to be paid 21 and 22 million in their final year. Betonio actually has a 3-year option after 2025. The team can actually sign him for 3 more years through 2028. So with my son already on the roster as the number 1 backup, I bring in Zenner, and in 5 or 26, here's your starter. By the time he gets towards the end of his deal, and see, then what's happened here is because he hasn't played, that his second contract not going to be that great. They'll pay him $12 million a year, and he's only played, so many games. If you take that 3 or 4 years that he has just sat and developed and played behind these guys, then when his second contract comes up, then they're only going to pay him $3 million a year, $4 million a year. Say, tell him, hey, if you do well for a couple of years, then we'll do an extension. You can get paid $10 million, $11 million, 12 years. That's why they got rid of J.C. Treader. He was going to make $10 million as a center. And analytics said, no, you can't pay a center $10 million. You can pay him 3.5. And Treader just said, "No, I'm not going to do that." And then when they tried to get him back, he said, "No, I'm fine. I enjoy my family and I enjoy fishing. Thanks. Enjoyed my time and thanks for playing."
Yeah.
So, Zender's written a children's book. Did you know that?
No.
Oh, I wasn't aware.
Yeah, he wrote a children's book. Think his senior year at Michigan. It's about offensive linemen. What it is, it's called The Men Up Front, and he had a friend of his illustrate it. It's 34 pages. It was published April 22nd, and it came in Michigan spring game last year, and so he's already a published. The accolades in high school from Zenter are a page all by itself. You name an accolade, USA Today or Super 26 or Prep Star Magazine or Conference State District, you name it, he was named first team on it. I came up with 10 different accolades that he had. So he was just an absolute star. I think he had 21 scholarship offers to go somewhere. He grew up in Florida, and then his dad got a job and he went to Massachusetts. So he's a big hunter, big fisherman. He's got a younger brother that's a starting linebacker for Notre Dame. He's got a sister that plays lacrosse. She's going to the University of Tampa. She's on scholarship for lacrosse. So that family has got 3 college athletes right now. Listen to this. In Florida, Zenner once caught an 8-foot sailfish, and sailfish are catch and release. But he also caught a 15-foot hammerhead.
Wow.
Now, I couldn't find out if he kept it or if he's allowed to keep it. I didn't find any of that out. 15 foot. So,
you can bet that's on his wall somewhere. He may have said he released it, but
yeah, Pat, they measured you and you fit perfectly inside that. Head first.
unbelievable.
So I think we got a really good player there. He's going to have time to develop. And think about this. If you bring in a young guy, 23 years old, to play offensive guard, and he's going to learn from Wyatt Teller and, okay. How can he not develop into something like that? He's got a powerful blocking presence, and he knows how to use his physicality and leverage to knock defenders backward and control engagements. I think experience, and you think about it, in the Big Ten, he played for Michigan, so that means he's got experience in a good environment, in a tough college environment, a tough conference. And to be able to learn. There's something, do y'all know what the Joe Moore Award is in college football?
No.
Yeah, I didn't either. I started digging. Annually, and I don't know where it comes from, like the Downtown Touchdown Club comes from an athletic club in New York, and they award the Heisman Trophy. The Joe Moore Award, I don't know where it comes from, but it is an award for the best offensive line unit for a season in college football. Kind of like the Heisman Award for offensive linemen. In his junior year, Michigan won the Joe Moore Award. Michigan offensive line in his sophomore year, they won the Joe Morrow. That never happens for one unit to win it back to back. So they were saying that Michigan's offensive line unit for 2 years in a row was the best in all of college football, all of D1, and he was part of that for 2 years.
So let's before we wrap this up, let's bottom line since we've talked about the Browns so much. What do you think we're going to do this year? How do you think we're going to do? We're going to make the playoffs, going all the way. Maybe make the playoffs. What do you think the record's going to be? Knowing everything that you know.
Let's start with Evan first on that. He's the smart one. He's our designated smart guy.
Yes.
Like that. I don't see a reason why there would be a drop off unless we have a lot of injuries. I think what we're going to see is, all right, the Texans, threw us a curveball. We're going to try and figure out how to deal with a high power offense like that. It seems to me that Kevin Stefanski is pretty intuitive and he learns on the fly, and he's going to figure out a way to have the team ready for CJ Stroud or somebody like him. We probably missed out if not seeing him in the regular season, because we would have been able to say, okay, this is what he does. Now, how are we going to counteract it? What are we going to do with the offense, and how are we going to counteract it with the defense? So I don't see any reason for us to drop off. I mean, injuries are always a big unknown, but it seems to me like we should be right around where we were, this last season. 12 wins, let's say. That's plenty enough to qualify.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's our next smartest guy.
I kind of agree with Evan. These injuries that we had this last year were record-setting. I hope that we don't have to go through that again. If you can get, I'm not sure how Chubb's going to do. I'm not sure how Watson's going to do. I'm not convinced that Watson was the best fit here to begin with anyway, but it is what it is. We're going to hopefully have him for 18 games or 17 games. My gut's telling me probably about the same as last year. I would love to see them hit the 12 mark. That game against Cincinnati last year, where they put all the extras in and it stunk. If they would have at least played the first string a little bit, I think that Texan game might have turned out a little bit different, but that's all water under the bridge. Personally, I'd love to see the 12 mark hit. I think we're probably still looking at 11 wins. I hope Myles Garrett got himself healed up, because he was a big part of that defense. With what they've added over there, it's a crapshoot. You got, like I was saying earlier, you got to watch the some of these players where they were drafted. They're either going to make it or break it. And if you get a couple that are going to make it out of the four, let's do it. If it's going to be all four of them, you're building for your future there. But some of it's going to weigh on them. I think all in all, though, I'm going to stick with 11 wins.
I personally think maybe 9, and only.
Well, you always think that.
Oh no!
You told me last year that they were going to be lucky to get 7.
Okay. Well, this year, looking
So
at
you've
the
upped it
schedule,
to 9 now. Let's all mark this down on our calendars here. We got to put this in the record book.
but
Yeah.
I think 9 because the schedule is harder this year. Like looking at the schedule, I mean, I know they haven't released the game days or whatever, but they play way better teams this year.
As long as we don't have to play Joe Flacco, we'll be all right.
Yeah, that's because they got that second place schedule.
Mm-hmm.
They don't have fourth place schedule anymore.
But I mean, which is
Yeah.
good in itself, but also
See, all fourth place teams in divisions play each other the following year. Get either.
oh wow, okay,
So how many? What's your win total there,
9.
Eric? So that you predicting them to go to 9 and 8?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Is my turn?
Yep. It's all down to you, sir.
Okay. I have to agree with Eric in that you have to look at the schedule. Now, the first question I want to know is how many starters will the Browns have this upcoming season? We don't know, do we?
No.
No.
That is the determining factor of any team. Attrition is just part of football. It just is. You know, when you're playing, Grant Delpit was the leading tackler. He was gone for the year. Our middle linebacker was gone for the year. We had almost an all-star team on IR. Starting quarterback was, how many quarterbacks did we have? You know, called up guys who were watching TV on a couch and say, hey, can you play? So we don't know how many starters. We had 3 starting offensive tackles on IR. We got San Francisco's practice squad that was starting left for us, Gary Christian. So we don't know how many starters are going to be hurt, but that's every team every year. So
I mean,
if you look at, go ahead.
the biggest question is how Watson is going to heal, because as far as I know, no other player well known has had that injury in this surgery. So the biggest question, how's Watson going to heal? If he doesn't,
he's only played 12 games for us.
Mm-hmm.
So if like Eric, let's look at the schedule. Number 1, we play in the hardest division in football. Does everybody concur?
Yeah, that's true.
Agree.
All right. So the Browns comeback win over the Ravens last year, it's one of the greatest games I've ever seen. We played 2 games against them, and Baltimore's great. I thought I had Baltimore in the Super Bowl. The Cincinnati Bengals had a down year. They still won 9 games. Pittsburgh Steelers went to the playoff. 3 teams in our division went to the playoffs last year. None of the teams had a losing record. None of them. So there's 6 games right there that you cannot say, okay, this is a win, this is a win, this is a win. No. They could all be losses. They could all be splits. We don't know. At home, okay, we're going to play the Chiefs. We know they're good. We're going to play the Chargers. We know they're good. We're going to play the Miami Dolphins. It was in the playoffs last year. We know they're good. We're going to play the Dallas Cowboys. We went to the playoffs last year.
They suck.
But there's 4 playoff teams that we're going to play. Then we also play the Giants, who are going to have a rebounding year. Look at our away games. Broncos, Raiders, Commanders, those all should be wins. But we also play Jacksonville, who should have won the division and collapsed. At one time, they had a 3-game lead. We beat them the first game of their skid. The Saints, yeah, that's a crappy division, won 9 games last. So, well, we also play the Eagles. the Eagles won 11 games last year. So if you look at our schedule, you can only look and say, okay, we should win these 5 games. 5 out of 17. Are we going to go 5-11? 5-12? Excuse me. If you go with the ones that are playoff versus ones with, so we're going to have to pull out a lot of games that on paper we may not, how are we going to beat the Dolphins and the Chiefs? And those are extraordinarily teams that can score all kind of points. I mean, the Dolphins scored 496 points last year. Second in the league, 496 points last year. So the Eagles, how are we going to beat them?
Well, 70 of those points was against Denver, wasn't it?
I got that. I understand. So, like Eric said, the schedule's going to be hard. I'm going to say 10 wins, 10-7. If we can beat somebody that we're not supposed to beat, if we can split against everybody in our division, if we can beat somebody like the Eagles or the Chargers or the Cowboys and get to 10 wins. Now, if you think of last year, we could have gone with 12 wins, but we gave away the last game of the year, which I was in full agreement of. We gave away the Bengals game. We didn't play anybody. I agree with that 100%. We could have had 12 wins last year, but we're in a tough division. I'm going to say 10-7 with the thought process that maybe we can steal a win and come away with another 11-6 season. It's all going to depend on the offense. It's going to depend on Deshaun Watson. It's going to depend on when Nick Chubb comes back. It's going to depend on our offensive tackle situation. Who are going to be our star offensive tackles? Is Jed Wills going to play? Or I think Dewan going to be a starter. Well, is the other one going to be Jack Conklin or Jed Wills? Can Jack Conklin stay healthy? I don't think he can. I think he's one more injury for being cut. So I'm going to go with I'm going to say a 10-7 season with the hope that we can steal a win and go 11-6 again.
Well, I pretty much agree with that. But the hopes of the Browns, I'm the hoper for them. That's why I went with
internal optimist.
That's right. I'm the eternal optimist.
Yeah.
That's what I meant.
But the question of it is, once they get into the playoffs, say they stay healthy with what they're at right now, you think they could do a playoff run? Think they could get through the playoffs and into a bowl?
Look at last year. We dominated the Texans the first game we played them.
Yeah,
dominated.
But they didn't have CJ.
Yeah, and I got that. It's like saying we beat the Bulls, but they didn't have Michael Jordan playing. I got that completely. They were ready for us. But if you also notice, we were 10 points down. We were driving on the 37-yard line of the Texans, and Flacco threw that first pick six, which the first pick six, he was throwing it to David Bell. David Bell's defender saw the ball flight, which Flacco hit because James Hudson didn't block, hit as he threw it. David Bell's man saw the ball in flight and came off of David Bell and intercepted that ball and went. The very next possession, another pick six.
That's what killed him.
The game was over. I know there was 8 minutes left in the third quarter. 2 pick sixes, 2 possessions. The game was over. It was just too much. But they were ready. We weren't. We played stale. I fully believe that it's not because we gave away the Cincinnati game and waited and rested all our players. We have a bye week every year. We rest players for 2 weeks. Every team does that. Every team rests their players. That's just the way it is. It beats them getting hurt and not being able to play. So I don't think that has anything to do with it.
I mean, if they run into the same problem as they did last year with the offensive line, who's the fourth tackle?
James Hudson.
Yikes. That's a problem.
Yeah. He is a problem. He is an absolute problem. But right now he's listed as the fourth offensive tackle. I think the guy they signed from Cincinnati, Hakeem Adinje, he might be backing up. I think they're going to put Wills, try to start Wills at his left tackle and Conklin at right tackle. But I'm telling you, on opening day, DeJuan Jones is going to supplant one or the other. You can't put him as a backup after what he did. But I think Adinje will back up one of them. Then if, like, DeJuan Jones takes over for Conklin, then Conklin will be the backup. They've also got Jermaine Afidi, and then James Hudson. That's your six right there. Last year they went to the Texans game with only 3 heavy offensive tackles on the roster, and 2 of them were practice squad players.
Is there any chance they could move, like, Jones takes over for Conklin, but they move Conklin over to the left side and have Wills be the backup?
Well, Conklin, he's always played right tackle in the pros. I think he played right tackle in college. Jed Wills actually was Alabama's right tackle for 3 years. I was shocked when they drafted him and put him over there at left tackle. But I have interviewed a bunch of former guys. One of them was Dan Fike, who played offensive guard for the Browns in the 1980s under the Schottenheimer years. And one of my questions was, what is the difference between right side and left side? He said the way that you your back foot and the way you use your hands. So if you're playing left side, your hands are like this. If you play right side, your hands are like this. If you play right side, your right foot back, your left foot is up. And if you play left side, your foot is back and your right foot is up. He said, that's all. He said, you learn to use that. He said, but the terminology is just the opposite. And everything to the right of the center is even. Everything to the left of the center is odd. So you just have to know that. He said, but that's no big deal. If you played football forever, ever since high school and beyond that, you understand that the numeration system is how it is. But he said that's the way. Now I've talked to other offensive linemen that say, yeah, you got to do this, and you got to do this, and you got to do this on this side and this side. But Dan Fike just said it's just the way you put your hands and put your feet.
Wow. Speaking of people back in that era, I got somebody I want to know if you remember. This would have been mid-'70s. He played for the Browns. He was, I think he was a running back. His name was Larry Poole. You remember him? He only played. I think he only played a couple of years. The reason I'm bringing him up is he was. I gotta say, it was probably the mid or early '70s when he played, and he wasn't very good because he kept dropping the ball. And the reason I'm asking about him is he was actually a foreman of mine at Chrysler when I hired in over there, or I had him as a foreman through most of the '80s, off and on. He's a good and nice dude. Only Brown I ever met.
Yeah.
Besides name dropping here.
Didn't he go to into an Ohio college.
Yeah, I think so. That's
Yeah, like Kent State.
yeah. Now that I think of that, he might have. But
yeah, running back. Yeah, he only played for like 3-4 years. I think 3 years for the Browns, and then he went and played AFL or some Oilers or
yeah,
Kansas City Chiefs.
I think you're right.
Yeah. Anyway, he played minimal. So
You guys are right. He's from Akron, and he went to KSU.
Wonder where he's at now. He had a good job at Chrysler.
I know.
Don't know.
I do know he's still alive.
Hired, probably.
Yeah, he's probably retired. Anyway, we need to wrap this up. Barry, it's been a blast having you this time. Well, every time.
Let me give you a football idiom before I go.
Okay. I was waiting for that.
All right.
Go ahead.
Yeah. So I want to tell you where the term start came from.
Okay.
We know this is a 5-yard penalty for the offense. The inception, origins of American football is the original rules were a lot of what rugby did, or a lot of soccer did, because if you take one and meld it to another, then you meld that other, you keep a lot of the same terminology exactly the same, like the goalpost in American football, the style, that is a rugby goal. A rugby has an H-style goalpost. So there were certain aspects of American football that were completely different, like system of downs. Rugby doesn't have a system of downs. Rugby is like, and the game just continues to go and continues to go. Well, Walter Camp, who invented American football, he decided that an offensive unit had to be set and could not move before the ball was snapped. The defense could move and they could shift and they could do this and that. So he made a penalty that if an offensive player moved before the ball was snapped, that this would be a penalty for the offense. The original penalty was called swaying of the body. That was the name of the play. But this was changed by a rules committee it started in late 1800s. In 1957, they changed that to imply the offensive player would attempt to start a false manner to deceive the defense. So they called it a false start.
Wow. That's so interesting.
Very good.
Hey, I thoroughly enjoyed my time with y'all.
Yeah, thanks for coming in, Barry. It's been a blast.
Yes, thank you so much.
When things get wrong, we'll hope to hopefully have you back. Whenever you get a minute, just let us know if you want to come on. You're always welcome.
Sounds great. Have a good week.
Okay. You too. Okay. With that, it is time to wrap up. Thank you so much for listening and have a good night. I threw Pat off because he didn't have the sound.
Good morning, good afternoon, and good night, Pittsburgh! Pittsburgh sucks. Pittsburgh sucks. Pittsburgh sucks. Pittsburgh sucks. The whole state of Michigan, the whole state of Michigan, the whole state of Michigan, we don't give a damn for the whole state of Michigan. We're from Ohio. We're from Ohio. We're from Ohio. Oh, we don't give a damn for the whole state of Michigan, the whole state of Michigan, the whole state of Michigan. We don't give a damn for the whole state of Michigan. We're from Ohio.
Yeah, we're close. We're clear.
Hello.
Get off my air, you ignorant ass! Come on.
Number one, music. Turn it up. Everybody sing, whoa, lonesome me. Well, now everybody's going out and having fun. I'm just a fool sitting home and having none. I can't get over how she set me free.
I'm glad you took care. Yes, I have.